There is a place in Africa where the desert is alive. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally alive, moving, expanding, swallowing everything in its path. Every single year, the Sahara Desert creeps further south. The people who live here call it something else entirely. They call it the end. But 2 years ago, something happened in northern Senegal that the UN's own experts quietly admitted they didn't think was possible. On a stretch of land that had been dead for 40 years, no trees, no grass, no life, something grew back. And what's driving it isn't some billion-dollar technology or a miracle chemical. It's a technique so ancient, so tied to this land's original blueprint, that it had been completely forgotten. Until now. This is the story of the Great Green Wall of Africa, and it goes much deeper than the headlines. Let's start with the scale of what we're actually dealing with, because most people have no idea how serious this is. The Sahara Desert has grown by roughly 10% over the last 100 years. That sounds like a statistic, but let me translate that into something real. 10% of the Sahara is approximately the size of the entire state of California, swallowed by sand since the early 1900s. And it's not stopping. It is moving south at an accelerating rate, consuming the Sahel, that thin, fragile strip of semi-arid land that sits between the desert and the rest of Africa. When the Sahel dies, communities collapse. Farmers have no land, livestock have no pasture. Families migrate to cities like Dakar, which already holds 4 million people, desperately looking for something that isn't there. The domino effect is catastrophic, and the timeline is not in the distant future. It is happening right now. So in 2007, 11 African nations signed onto one of the most ambitious ecological projects in human history. Plant a wall of trees stretching 8,000 kilometers across the entire width of the continent, from Dakar on the Atlantic coast of Senegal all the way to Djibouti on the Red Sea. A living barrier. A green wall against the advancing desert. On paper, it sounds almost mythological, like something out of an ancient story, a wall built not of stone, but of roots and leaves standing between humanity and oblivion. But here's what the documentaries don't show you: how they're actually doing it, and who figured out that the old knowledge was the answer all along. Now, before I tell you what's working, I need you to understand what they were actually dealing with on the ground. Because this wasn't just empty land, this was dead land. In the village of Widou Thiengoly, in northern Senegal near the Senegal River, the natural border between Senegal and Mauritania, the soil had been completely destroyed. 40 years of overgrazing, drought cycles, and the gradual retreat of trees had turned the earth into something that looked like a clay parking lot baked in an oven. Hard as cement, sealed shut. Drop a seed on it, and nothing happens. The rain hits it and runs straight off. No absorption, no nourishment, just erosion. From satellite imagery, you can actually see the sand dunes of Mauritania, the Sahara itself, pressing right up against the river's edge like something waiting to cross. When the UN World Food Programme arrived in 2019 with a restoration plan, many of the local elders smiled quietly. They had seen NGOs come and go. They had seen promises. One elder reportedly told a WEP team leader something that stuck with him for months: "You can bring your machines." The desert doesn't care about machines. He wasn't wrong about the machines, at least. What the WIF team discovered, working alongside Senegalese land experts, was that the solution wasn't imported, it was remembered. Deep in the traditional knowledge of Sahelian communities was a technique that had been practiced for centuries before colonial land disruption and monoculture farming pushed it into near extinction. It was called the half-moon system, and it is deceptively simple. Semicircular basins are carved into the earth along precise contour lines. Each basin is exactly 4 meters in diameter. The open end faces downhill. When rain falls, and in the Sahel rain is violent and brief, arriving in concentrated bursts during a narrow seasonal window, the water hits the basin, slows down, and is held. The raised earthen embankment on the downhill side acts as a tiny dam. The water soaks in. The soil underneath receives moisture. Life becomes possible again. On this 130-hectare restoration site near Widou, just 30 hectares out of the 300,000 the WWF has now rehabilitated across the region, there are 7,500 half-moons. Digging a single one takes one trained person an entire day. This site was built by a team of 150 villagers, working through the dry. Season heat, armed with hand tools and inherited knowledge. Think about that number. 150 people, digging by hand, for weeks, not because the government told them to, because they understood what was at stake. And here's where it gets interesting, because this is the part the mainstream coverage almost always skips over. The half-moon system alone doesn't restore an ecosystem. Water retention is only the first move in a much longer, more sophisticated strategy. What's planted inside these basins, and how it's planted, follows a logic that modern agriculture is only just beginning to understand scientifically. Inside the half-moons, they plant sorghum and millet, crops that have been cultivated in the Sahel for over 3,000 years. These aren't random choices. These species are genetically calibrated to this environment. They produce massive amounts of biomass. Their root systems break compacted soil. Their stalks, left after harvest, feed microbes and fungi back into the ground, rebuilding the invisible biological infrastructure that makes soil alive rather than just dirt. But alongside the half-moon system, there's a second layer, planting lines and horticultural beds. Moringa trees, some of the most nutritionally dense plants on Earth, known across West Africa as the miracle tree, are planted in rows alongside pigeon pea, a nitrogen-fixing legume that pulls fertilizer directly from the atmosphere and deposits it into the ground. Between these rows, fruit trees, guava, citrus, tamarind, trees that will feed families for generations. This layered system, this architecture of plants, is not random. It's modeled on how a natural forest builds itself. Each plant serves a role. Each root system interacts with others. The whole structure, over time, begins to self-organize, becoming more resilient, more productive, and more stable without external inputs. The scientific term for this approach is syntropic farming, developed formally in Brazil by Swiss-born farmer Ernst Gitsch in the 1980s, who drew on indigenous knowledge from around the world to codify something that village communities in the Sahel had already been doing intuitively for millennia. In other words, they didn't invent a new solution, they recovered an old one. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question. If this technique exists, if it works this clearly, if it's been proven across 300,000 hectares, why did the land die in the first place? Why was this knowledge lost? And why, in 2025, are we still treating this as an experimental project rather than the standard response? Those are questions worth asking. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions. What I can tell you is what the land looks like today, 2 years after restoration began on that once-dead 30-hectare site. Where there was bare, cracked earth, there is now a canopy. Millet stalks standing taller than a man, guava trees bearing fruit, moringa leaves being harvested by women who, just 2 years ago, were preparing to leave their village permanently. The underground water table in the area has measurably risen, because the half-moons are doing exactly what they're designed to do, recharging the groundwater, building reserves for the dry season, creating a slow, quiet buffer against the next drought. The WWF's goal is to rehabilitate 2 million hectares across the Sahel as part of the Great Green Wall initiative, with Senegal serving as the operational blueprint. The Senegal River, which from space clearly marks the line between green Senegal and sandy Mauritania, is no longer just a geographical boundary. It is becoming the first major defensive line. If the land on the southern bank can be restored and held, if the roots go deep enough, if the trees grow tall enough, the desert cannot cross. That is not a metaphor. That is an ecological engineering calculation. Before we close, I want you to remember one thing. The Great Green Wall is not being built by governments alone. It's not being built by satellites or AI or billion-dollar climate funds, though those things exist on the edges. It's being built primarily by villagers with hand tools, recovering knowledge their grandparents carried, working on land there. Children will inherit. In a world that constantly tells you the problems are too big, too complex, too far gone, there is a 30-hectare patch of land in northern Senegal that was dead for 40 years. And today, it is alive. That means something. I'll leave it with you to decide what. If this story made you think, drop a comment below. Tell me what you believe is really going on with the Sahara's expansion, because not everyone thinks it's purely natural. Like this video if the Great Green Wall deserves more attention than it gets, and share it with someone who still thinks Africa's problems are unsolvable because they haven't seen this yet. Subscribe to TryWise, there's a lot more coming.